Good morning, everybody. It's 8 a.m. I'm going to call the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District Commission meeting of May 11th, 2023 to order. Let's see. Welcome to all of our guests that are here today and those that are participating via Zoom. And so I want to go through a few things and then we'll get going with the rest of the meeting. So I'm Tom Hobble. I'm the commission chair with the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District, and I'm joined by fellow commissioners, Commissioner Wilson, Commissioner Brad Murphy, Commissioner Ezra Meyer, Commissioner Greg Freeze, Commissioner Bookland, and Commissioner Marcia Rummel, who is a new appointee. We have staff and others from the district present as well. This meeting is being held in the Fitchburg Council Chambers. The location allows for a more accessible combination of in-person and virtual meeting than our district facilities. So we want to thank the city of Fitchburg for allowing us to use their building today. A portion of today's meeting will be dedicated to a public hearing regarding phosphorus compliance recommendations for the district discharge onto Badger Mill Creek. The commission is voluntarily holding this public hearing to receive your input. This is not a question and answer session. We have also received the written comments that were submitted during a public period that ended earlier this week. After the public hearing portion, the commission will continue discussion on the compliance recommendation. So I want to say a few things about the public hearing. I'll do that now as to how the process will work, and then we'll go on. To ensure the public hearing is conducted efficiently and effectively, we have a few notes on logistics and requests for participants. To support efficiencies, we have requested you register to speak. If you are in the room and have not registered, please go to the back of the room and do so. For those joining us virtually, you may be sure to express your intent to speak by messaging Lynn Coleman in the Zoom chat. We will first accept comments from those in the room who have registered. Then comments will be accepted from those who have registered to speak via Zoom. We may hold a recess in between the in-person and the virtual speakers. For those speaking, there will be an order to follow. In the room, direct us for what microphone to use, microphone 1, microphone 2. Located to my left and right side of the room, a staff member will call the first speaker's name and 2 persons on deck for each microphone. On Zoom, we will call speakers and provide an order in the chat. All speakers should state their name and affiliation, if any, before beginning their comments. To be equitable and mindful of the time for all persons, we ask that speakers limit comments to 5 minutes. In the room, a clock visible to the speakers will count down your time, and a staff member will provide a warning at the halfway point and again at the 30-second mark. Please be mindful of the time and wrap up your comments within the 5 minutes. No trading or reassignment of time to another speaker will be allowed. I ask that you please address comments to the commission or panel rather than engage in direct dialogue with other participants or audience members. Please keep your comments to the topic at hand, which is the phosphorus compliance recommendation for Badger Mill Creek. All speakers should be respectful and courteous to other participants, even if they disagree with their viewpoints. Personal attacks, offensive language, or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and may result in removal from the hearing. Again, this is a public opportunity for the commission to listen to your comments. It is neither a forum to debate the issue nor a question and answer session. If you need assistance or special accommodations to deliver your comment, please raise your hand now and staff will be available to help. We thank you in advance for your courtesy and respectfulness in adhering to these procedures. Staff will note the comments and prepare a document where responses or information are required. That document will be made available to the commission and posted on the district's website as soon as practicable after this meeting. At the May 25th meeting, the commission is expected to deliver its formal decision on the compliance recommendation. Before we take public comments, staff will provide a brief presentation. So that's how the order will go. So let's then proceed with the rest of the agenda. We have virtual meeting guidance. Janelle, are you going to give that, please?
Yes, just a little bit more detail. Again, the mics are mic 1 and mic 2. When you hear your name called today, we're going to be queuing you up 3 at each mic at a time. If you need to sit until your time, that is fine. You will hear your name. Once again, you have a 5-minute allotment of time. You will hear those markers at 2.5 minutes and at 30 seconds. Also in the front of the room, we have a timer so you can visually help keep track of your time as you're speaking. Couple other details. When you step to the mic to speak, please start by introducing yourself, your name, and if you have an affiliation that you're representing today. Other than that, those on Zoom, you will also hear yourself queued, will be up and one on deck when we attend to the virtual comments. With that, let's have a great meeting, everybody, and welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. That will take us to the welcome of Commissioner Marcia Rummel and introductions. Tom, do you want to begin? How do I turn this on? The button right there. It's on.
You want me to tell who I am and who I represent, is that correct? Yes, I am Tom Wilson. I represent the towns in the district, and happy to be here in Fitchburg, and it's good to see some familiar faces out there, and looking forward to a wonderful debate on this. Thank you.
Hi, Brad Murphy. Good to see you again. I'm looking forward to you working with us on the commission, Marcia. I'm one of the City of Madison representatives.
Tom Havel, and I'm one of the cities and villages representatives.
Morning, Marcia, and welcome. I'm Ezra Meyer, another City of Madison representative on the commission. Welcome.
Good morning, Greg Fries, City of Madison, and it's nice to see you again.
Good morning, Marcia. Beth Bookland, and I'm a City of Madison representative.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Marcia Rummel. I'm an alder in downtown Madison, District 6. I was appointed by the mayor to serve for this term, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Okay, Sarah, Commissioner Eskridge is, I think, virtual. Sarah, do you want to say hi to Marcia?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, Marcia. Sarah Eskridge. As you know, I was an alder. We were alders together. I was first a City of Madison appointee. Now I'm a Dane County Cities and Villages Association appointee, as I now live in Middleton. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Commissioner Clark is absent. He's a Cities and Villages representative as well. Okay, so that will take us, Paul, are you going to do the oath of office?
I will indeed. So if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, the undersigned Marcia Rummel.
I, Marcia Rummel.
Of Madison, Wisconsin.
Of Madison, Wisconsin.
Having been appointed as one of the commissioners.
Having been appointed as one of the commissioners.
Of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District.
Of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District.
Do hereby swear that.
Do hereby swear that
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin.
And the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin.
And that I will faithfully discharge.
And that I will faithfully discharge.
The duties of said office.
The duties of said office.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And it's a good introduction for Marcia. She's probably had her share of meetings. Okay, let's see. We'll go to the appearances, announcements. Michael, any announcements?
President Hubble, no announcements today.
Okay. And do we have any appearances by the public on an issue not related to Badger Mill Creek? If you're here for Badger Mill Creek, you'll be heard at the time of the public hearing. So anybody here or virtually that has any comment other than on Badger Mill Creek? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar where we have the approval of the 27th of April meeting minutes, the 1 May meeting minutes, approval of cash statement capital, cash statement debt service, review and approval of sanitary sewer extension plans. I think there are a couple of them. And review and proposals and award of contract for the 2023 collection system facilities plan update. Do we have any comments or questions on any of these items before we get a vote? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
It's Wilson. I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson,
I'll second it. Murphy.
motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Murphy to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, that will take us to the topic section where the first part is the public hearing on the final Badger Mill Creek phosphorus compliance solution. And I will call the public hearing open. So Janelle, I think you're going to be the one to read the names. And so please be mindful of the time and respectful of other people.
President
Commissioner Hubble,
Hubble,
I believe we have a presentation first.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Marty, you're on deck.
Thank you, Commissioner. So Kathy Lake will be giving the short presentation, and I just want to give a short introduction about her. She's our pollution prevention manager, and she leads a great team whose work involves reducing sources of pollution to improve water quality. And she was one of our key players and initiatives in our Yahara Winds project since it was born. And she's a professional engineer, has an MBA from UW-Madison, and has worked on a wide variety of water, wastewater, and stormwater projects over the last 30 years. So Kathy, please feel free to start your presentation.
thank you, Marty, and thank you all for being here today, here and virtually. Is not working? This part works. You have. If someone can control, that would be great. There you go. Do I need to do anything else? Oh, there we go. Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District serves more than 400,000 people in 25 communities and 187 square miles of Dane County. We are the regional wastewater provider, and we own and operate over 760,000 feet of sewer pipes. We own, operate, and maintain 18 pumping stations throughout the region, and we operate and maintain 46 other pumping stations for our customer communities. Each year, we recover over 13 billion gallons of water that you use every day in your lives, and we return it safely to the environment. We are also able to collect and return 36 million gallons of fertilizer, nutrient-rich fertilizer, to local farms each year. Our plant and our sewers and our pumping stations are run around the clock, 365 days a year, so that whenever you want to flush the toilet, it's going to go somewhere and be recovered. I still don't think I'm driving this. Okay, perfect. We serve a very large geographic area. We serve up to Dane, DeForest, Morrisonville on the north, east to Cottage Grove, west to Middleton, southwest to Verona, and just north of Stoughton around Lake Kaganza. We have a very large service area, but we only have one wastewater treatment plant, and that's the Nine Springs plant that's shown here. We're very unique in that we have two discharge locations. So all the water goes through one treatment process, but then at the end of that process, we have some water that's sent to Badfish Creek and some water that's sent to Badger Mill Creek. If anyone is ever interested in learning more about the treatment process or Madison Met, we have a tour program, and you're all welcome to come and join a tour. The district is very committed to phosphorus reduction. Each day, everyone is eating and sending us phosphorus. We get about 6 milligrams per liter in concentration in the water that we receive at the treatment plant. We've optimized and improved our wastewater plant such that we remove 96% of that phosphorus. Our water that leaves the plant is somewhere between 0.2 and 0.4 milligrams per liter, depending on the time in the season. The new phosphorus regulations that we're required to follow require another 70% reduction in that. In addition to improvements on the water side of the treatment plant, we've also invested in Ostara phosphorus harvesting system, which removes additional phosphorus from our fertilizer. We've improved and optimized how we apply fertilizer to the farm fields. And we, as Marty mentioned, we're the catalyst of the first and the largest adaptive management project in the state. As a point source discharger under the Clean Water Act, we have a permit. Our permit is issued through the Department of Natural Resources, Wisconsin DNR. Our permit has compliance schedule for us to comply with phosphorus requirements. And we are currently working towards a final compliance alternatives plan that's due at the end of May this year. We have a final compliance date in our permit of September 2028. Throughout this process, we have been engaging the community and working with interested parties around many of the topics. We have had specific engagement for groups, individual boards, and organizations. As we move forward, we'll continue to engage stakeholders, interested parties, and work together to move the project forward. The district has been working on phosphorus compliance for Badger Mill Creek for over 5 years. The final compliance alternatives that are currently being considered are watershed approaches, either adaptive management or water quality trading, adding tertiary treatment at the wastewater plant for the Badger Mill Creek effluent return, or discontinuing the effluent return. The district is very experienced with watershed approaches. We started the Yahara Winds project at the very beginning, and we were the first adaptive management project that was moved forward, and we're still the largest adaptive management project in the state. When you look at putting in place watershed approaches, the types of practices you use are very similar between water quality trading and watershed adaptive management. What we found through this analysis is based on the rules, there just are not enough pounds to make watershed approaches work in Badger Mill Creek. We've also found that treatment is a very problematic compliance strategy. Treatment does not help us comply with any parameters other than total phosphorus. It has higher greenhouse gas emissions, less resiliency. It delays other capital projects. It increases our operational complexity. It also creates barriers for future compliance with anticipated stricter regulations. Tertiary treatment will cost our ratepayers over $24 million and increase our rates 2.2 to 3.7%. That's over the baseline increases. We have also evaluated discontinuing flow to Badger Mill Creek. We found that since the original decisions were made on this project, stormwater infiltration regulations and improvements have led to higher groundwater in the area. Increased rainfall has led to increased surface water and groundwater. As a result, Badger Mill Creek stream flow has steadily increased. The district has also consulted with experts to ground truth that data with an in-stream study that looked at the stream with and without effluent return. We found that the stream would be more natural without effluent. Some of the parameters like temperature are really artificially constrained with the effluent there now. The photos on the right show the Fitcherona Road intersection that has been closed multiple times due to flooding. The groundwater path would flow towards Badger Mill Creek. The picture on the bottom right shows flooding around our effluent discharge, showing all the water that comes in. And this is a picture when the effluent was off. Next. We found that there are a lot of sources of water to Badger Mill Creek. In the center of this photo, you'll see the yellow effluent return location. But Badger Mill Creek starts much further north up in the city of Madison. I'm going to see if my mouse will work. They gave me a big mouse with a big red thing here. So Badger Mill Creek's flow actually starts in the neighborhoods of West Madison, and the flow comes down these paths, coming together in Nesbitt Pond. We also know the Fitch-Rona Road area over here and Goose Lake are part of a study from the town of Verona and the city of Fitchburg. And the recommendations are to have culverts coming into Badger Mill Creek. There's a lot of wetlands and ponds that feed the stream, all upstream of our aerator here. There's undeveloped lands that are coming through these flow paths up into wetlands and areas upstream of our effluent return. We also know that the city of Verona neighborhoods down here are flowing up towards Badger Mill Creek. There's a big spring complex that's coming in as well. There is a lot of groundwater in the area, and it is feeding the stream as well. If we were to discontinue flow to Badger Mill Creek, that flow goes somewhere. Everything goes somewhere. So if we stop flow to Badger Mill Creek, it goes to Badfish Creek. So we also analyzed the impact on Badfish Creek of this alternative. We will have in Badfish Creek, it will have the same in-stream concentrations of phosphorus and other parameters. And that's because we have one treatment stream. We have one treatment stream, that water comes, it leaves at the same concentration. It'll also have the same pumping rates. We can pump with 1, 2, or 3 pumps, and we have a set force main. So what Badfish Creek will see doesn't change. We also have a maximum pumping rate that we can't exceed. If we have additional flow at the Nine Springs plant, we're really lucky in that we have very large storage tanks that we can hold water and lagoon system that we can hold water and then slowly return back into our plant to run through our normal process. We also know that Badfish Creek will experience additional pounds of phosphorus reduction that will occur through the Harwins project. As we've worked through this project over the last 5 years, we have found many opportunities to enhance the Badger Mill Creek corridor. As I mentioned, there's a study that's been undertaken by the city of Fitchburg and the town of Verona that is looking at some flood mitigation strategies that could also help with stream flow and flood mitigation. There's a lot of habitat improvement that could happen throughout the corridor. There's areas that have significant sediment in there. There's a bridge sitting at the bottom of the channel that water's trying to run around. There are a lot of obstructions as you go through the channel. So there's a lot of opportunities to really enhance and further improve the health of the stream. So as we have gone through this many years of analysis, we've come to the recommended alternative of eliminating the Badger Mill Creek return, but also providing $1 million for projects that support stream health and resiliency. So the district wants to be a good partner to all the organizations in the area, and we've seen how that stream could really be improved through these partnerships and through the work with all the stakeholders. And with that, I would like to turn it over to someone but thank you all for your time. We really appreciate this opportunity.
With that, I would like to welcome our guest for the public hearing. I will start to call your name. The first 3 individuals, I'd like you please to make your way to microphone 1. When we are 1 out from finishing at microphone 1, I will call for microphone 2 to start lining up at microphone 2. The first 3 individuals, and please forgive me if I mispronounce any names. David Lonsdorf, Lynn Dybel, and Tup Wells, please.
Someone going to tell me to go? Or just go ahead? All right, thank you to the commission for allowing me to have a chance to speak. My name is David Lonsdorf. I'm a retired family physician from UW Health. I live at 1717 Beach Road in the town of Verona. I'm also a supervisor on the Town of Verona board, but I'm here today representing the Badger Mill Creek Preservation Coalition, an ad hoc group of citizens and organizations who care a great deal about Badger Mill Creek. We're opposed to the MMSD staff proposal to shut off the effluent flow to Badger Mill Creek. There's two types of reasons for our opposition, scientific and political. The scientific reasons, the staff report says that the natural flow to the creek has increased over the last 20 to 30 years due to better stormwater management and climate changes that have increased rainfall. These are theoretical reasons that are really unsupported by the data obtained from stream gauges that have been recording flow for more than 30 years. Stream gauge data clearly show little to no change in the baseline flow over that time period. Further, these same gauges show that flow in the creek decreases dramatically during periods of drought. During these drought-related natural decreases in flow, the effluent from the MMSD supplies as much as 50% of the creek's flow. Discontinuing the effluent flow will dramatically lower water levels during dry periods and harm the biology of the creek. Additionally, the staff report says that the sewer effluent may be harming the trout population and that shutting it off will actually improve the health of the trout. We believe that the opposite is true. Over the 20 to 30 year period that the sewer effluent has been discharged to the creek, the trout population has increased steadily, so that the Badger Mill Creek is now a class 2 trout stream. Prior to the start of the discharge, there was almost no trout in the stream. If the effluent were harmful to the trout and other aquatic biology, we would expect to see a decline in the trout population, but in fact, the opposite has happened. Political reasons for opposing this. The government of every community along Badger Mill Creek has unanimously passed a resolution opposing the proposed shutoff of flow. This includes the city of Verona, the towns of Montrose and Verona, the village of Belleville. This week, Dane County Board also unanimously adopted a resolution opposing the shutoff of flow. In addition, several interested organizations, including Trout Unlimited, Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, and Friends of Badger Mill Creek, have all stated publicly their opposition to discontinuing the flow. The Friends of Badfish Creek have also stated that they're opposed to adding the effluent to Badfish Creek. We believe that MMSD management and staff and the commissioners should pay close attention to the strong unanimous opposition to their plans and carefully consider other options. We understand that too much phosphorus is unhealthy for aquatic life and is causing a problem downstream in lakes and rivers. Simply diverting the phosphorus to discharge from Badger Mill Creek to Badfish Creek will not solve the problem of excess phosphorus in our waterways. Because the human population of Dane County is growing rapidly, the amount of phosphorus in our sewage is going to increase also. If we're going to be able to continue to decrease the amount released to the environment, we need to remove more of it from the effluent during the treatment process. Although building a new treatment facility is expensive, it's the right thing to do in our opinion. Transferring the phosphorus to another watershed is just kicking the problem down the road and not solving it. The other source of phosphorus pollution in our waterways is from animal waste, primarily cow manure that's being spread on farm fields. Adaptive management has been applied in many localities to dramatically reduce farm runoff and needs to be increased in the Badger Mill Creek and Sugar River watersheds. The Upper Sugar River Watershed Association has a strong relationship with local farmers and can help spearhead this process. In addition, Dane County government under Joe Parisi has pioneered treatment of animal waste with manure processors to improve the management of it. We have the resources to make this option work, even though it may take time and money to do so. It's the right thing to do. In summary, we would like to see the commission vote to continue to discharge the highly treated sewer effluent to Badger Mill Creek
30
as they
seconds.
promised to do so in 1993. We'd like to see improved sewage treatment and improved adaptive management program with local farmers to decrease the runoff into nearby streams. Thank you very much.
Next on, Lynn Dybel.
Members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this issue. My name is Lynn Dybel. I'm commenting as director of the Friends of Badfish Creek Watershed, chapter of the Rock River Coalition. I am also a former member of the board of the River Alliance of Wisconsin. Our group opposes the diversion by MMSD of effluent currently going to Badger Mill Creek into Badfish Creek. Our mission is to protect the health of Badfish Creek, a beloved destination for canoeists and kayakers year-round. To illustrate, a trail cam on just one short segment of the Badfish recorded over 1,500 people in 1,400 boats during a 9-month period. This does not include the many paddlers who put in downstream or take out upstream of the cam. These paddlers deserve safe water. Wisconsin state law requires that recreational waters be protected. However, MMSD's 2022 report, 46 pages long, does not mention mitigation measures for protecting the health of this important recreational resource. Because MMSD has researched the effects on Badger Mill Creek, but has apparently not studied the potential negative effects on Badfish Creek, I will focus primarily on those. Water quality. In recent years, E. coli levels on the Badfish have reached levels that are clearly unsafe for recreation. The Friends, the Rock County Health Department, and the State Lab of Hygiene conducted a 2-year study which demonstrated that the high E. coli levels are from human sources, i.e. effluent, not from ruminants. DNR and MMSD acknowledge this problem by increasing the disinfection period to 9 months from 6. However, adding 8% more effluent would increase the already unsafe levels of E. coli and other pathogens in the Badfish. Erosion. The Badfish has been the recipient of MMSD's effluent since the 1950s. In order to accommodate Madison's effluent, which has doubled the stream's historic flow, the Dane County portions of the creek have been dredged and straightened, leaving the entire creek vulnerable to erosion and excessive sediment loading. Increasing the flow by 8% would increase the potential for erosion. Water budget imbalance. Shifting the 8% from one watershed to another would result in a water budget imbalance between the Sugar River watershed and the Badfish watershed, which is part of the greater Yahara watershed. Verona is growing rapidly, which means its wells are pumping more and its effluent production is also growing. Moving water out of the Sugar River watershed could potentially reduce that aquifer. Phosphorus. MMSD's stated goal for diverting the effluent from Badger Mill Creek into the Badfish is to meet DNR phosphorus requirements for Badger Mill Creek. However, MMSD has not outlined how they would mitigate the consequent phosphorus increase in the Badfish, which already has phosphorus levels that are not meeting DNR goals. Simply moving phosphorus around does not solve the problem. Tertiary treatment may require more energy usage, but it is a long-term solution to a problem that cannot be brushed away. A stream is a complex system. Even moderate changes can have powerful impacts on its equilibrium. The health of these two streams is at stake. With this in mind, choosing diversion between watersheds because it's the simplest option is inexcusable. And choosing the option that reduces the cost and energy usage at the expense of the health of two well-loved recreational streams is false economy. Please take the long view and choose another option.
At this time, I would like to welcome guests to mic 2, Tough Wells. You are on deck at mic 1 yet. The next 3 to start making your way to mic 2, James Danke, Lindsay Foy, Luke Diaz, please. Tough Wells, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this hearing and the opportunity to address the commission. My name is Tup Wells. I'm the Vice President of the Southern Wisconsin Chapter of Trout Unlimited, and I think, as my comments will reveal, is probably relevant. I have served on this commission before, and good to see some of you here. 3 comments, hopefully within 5 minutes. The first is we hope the commission will allow those of us who are concerned about this to submit written comments after this hearing. We've already heard Ms. Lake's presentation. There's been a change in some of the wording that MMSD has used. We think we're going to learn some new facts today, so we would very much appreciate the opportunity to submit written comments after this hearing. Secondly, I've given you a couple of documents. I think a key document is an email from David Rowe, the supervising fish biologist for the DNR in this area. I think he provides a very clear statement of the value of Badger Mill Creek and contradicts some of the public positions that MMSD has taken on this. You're going to hear some criticisms of MMSD's approach. Let me propose a solution based on MMSD history, because I don't think the commission is ready, given their staff report, to just vote for tertiary treatment or for adaptive management. But look to your own history. When this came up in the Yahara watershed, what MMSD did was to convene a subcommittee that looked at all the alternatives for phosphorus reduction in the Yahara watershed. Critically, that not only involved MMSD staff, it involved Dane County, it involved farmers, it involved other local governments, and the committee had commissioners. So by the time the recommendation was made, there was extensive fair public participation, and the commissioners themselves had heard from a variety of viewpoints. I think the first thing you might say is, well, we don't have time for this. You do have time. Your preferred solution is to shut off the effluent. You turn a switch. It's off.
2:30.
You have time to restart this process, as County Executive Parisi has asked you to do. Involve the public in a more meaningful way. Have some of the commission members themselves be involved in the process, be able to talk to other experts besides your own. At the end of that process, if indeed turning off the effluent is the solution, you'll have plenty of time to do so. You'll also have time to adopt other solutions or versions of those solutions. And you will find, people may still disagree about what to do, but they will have had a fair shot at participation. The commission will be more directly involved. You'll hear more directly from other experts on this view. Okay, so why do this? It's very hard. You do it because you're a local government in Dane County. As I look at every member of this commission, basically, if you're a local government in Dane County, you're expected to address tough problems, imaginatively engage the public. And if you have to spend some money, you do so responsibly. And when that happens, you have the support of citizens. And Marcia Rummel can look at all sorts of City of Madison projects. Brad Murphy, Gary Freeze, Greg Freeze on a variety of environmental human services issues. Tom Wilson, God bless you, the town of Westport just spent Lord knows how many millions to secure a really valuable property. So in this community, the public supports your hard work, your thoughtful decisions. And if you need to spend a little money, we will support that if it's well conceived for well-conceived goals. So thank you very much. And please make this decision as thoughtfully and carefully as possible.
Mr. Danke, you have the floor.
James Danke, President, Preserve Our Rural Landscape. We're a 501 that was founded almost 20 years ago to specifically oppose American transmission lines, putting power towers through southern Dane County, which would go through the rural townships of Albion, Dunkirk, Rutland, Oregon. Today, we're here because of another threat. I'm also a founding member of the Friends of Badfish Creek. And one of the engagements we had with the commission with years ago was that we were just about the very first signatory to Yahara Winds, which was, as we heard, your keystone project to reduce phosphorus. This will not reduce phosphorus for the bad fish. In fact, it will have harmful effects going along. And I believe that this was chosen for economic reasons. The same way in the 1950s that your great-grandparent commissioners chose to put all of the effluent going down the bad fish. Why? Because it didn't, as a very old friend of mine said to me at the time, it's because it's the only waterway that does not go through a municipality. So there was no governmental opposition. We know that the budgetary constraints that were outlined by MMSD have flexibility. Or if there is money to employ a tattoo artist, there's money to make the water cleaner than it is. Thank you very much.
Ms. Foy, you have the floor.
Good morning, MMSD commissioners, staff, and everyone here today to share your perspective. I'm Lindsay Foy, Executive Director of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, and I appreciate the time and consideration you have and continue to devote to this important issue. As they're presented, the winter 2023 study and historical assessments by MMSD staff and consultants are not sufficient to conclude that eliminating effluent discharge to Badger Mill Creek will not harm the health of the creek and of the trout fishery. When consulted about the study design, DNR fishery staff made it clear that a short-term winter study would not be able to make valid assessments about biological conditions of the stream. In the absence of a suitable study, we can only rely on the same expert opinion, which states that eliminating treated effluent would likely have negative impacts to the brown trout population and to natural reproduction and recruitment. I appreciate the questions commissioners posed about considering future climate and development pressures when looking at the resiliency of Badger Mill Creek and the overall Sugar River watershed. The lack of this kind of assessment has been a primary concern for Upper Sugar and other stakeholders for some time. The brief about projected rainfall in the agenda packet for today's meeting is a good first step in addressing this concern, but there's more work to be done here. Data from the USGS gauging stations show an overall decreasing trend in flow since 2021, which coincides with a period of drier conditions. Through improved stormwater practices, land cover, and land use change, they certainly impact infiltration, but groundwater and base flow is more heavily influenced by variations in climate and precipitation. This was reflected in the change in messaging from the presentation this morning, so I appreciate that. I respect that the May 31st deadline must be met, and I hope we can continue an open dialogue with commissioners, district staff, experts, and other stakeholders before then to learn more about this together. It will not only help our collective understanding of this complex issue, but avoid short-sighted decisions that externalize important factors that are more difficult to understand than cost and energy savings. We cannot lose sight of the long-term integrity of the watershed as a whole, including questions of water quantity and biological degradation in pursuit of water quality goals today. Though we have heard district staff recommendation for permit compliance, there are still other options that would maintain the health of the creek. It is counterintuitive to implement a phosphorus reduction strategy that directly harms the stream's designated use as a cold water community. This is precisely what the water quality standards are meant to protect. Adaptive management is certainly more complex than additional treatment and discontinuing discharge. Contrary to the assertion that this is not a viable alternative, there has been some indication from DNR that this can be done. Let's also remember that additional treatment is the only option that truly addresses the amount of phosphorus in the effluent rather than relying on a regulatory variance for either discharge location. I understand there's less certainty about meeting phosphorus requirements with watershed approaches than eliminating the discharge, and that plant improvements are costly and time consuming. However, MMSD commissioners made a commitment to the Sugar River watershed in 1993. We may disagree on whether we have enough information to confidently dismiss the concerns that led to the decision to return treated water to the Sugar River watershed in the first place. But the fact remains that in the opinion of experts, eliminating discharge to Badger Mill Creek will harm the health of the creek and the viability of the trout fishery, and that represents an abandonment of that commitment. Upper Sugar and MMSD have had a good partnership over the years, and we want to continue to be a partner in any way we can. That includes on-the-ground projects or helping to educate people on why rate increases might be necessary to properly address problems resulting from the waste we all generate. The wastewater discharge to Badger Mill Creek is considered a valuable resource that has contributed to the improvement of the stream conditions since the 1990s. I appreciate the inclusion of funds for stream improvement as part of a proposal to stop returning water to the Sugar River watershed. More detail is needed to understand the real implications of this. Is it possible to mitigate the loss of 3.6 million gallons of water per day discharged under conditions that, according to DNR, mimic a groundwater spring? Would the $1 million proposed be enough to do this? If the commission decides to move forward with this proposal and the answer to one or both of those questions turns out to be no, who's left responsible? I urge the commissioners to continue looking into this issue. Speak to experts
30
and
seconds.
stakeholders directly and ensure that you have the information you need to make a responsible and informed decision. Thank you.
Before Mr. Diaz, I'd like to call for on deck to mic 1, Dr. Robert Bohannon, Jeff Johnson, and Steve Gaffield, please. Mr. Diaz, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Luke Diaz. I'm the current mayor of the city of Verona. Here speaking to ask the MMSD Commission to not do the option to turn off the effluent to the Badger Mill Creek and instead direct MMSD staff to pursue other options. As you might have noticed, this decision or proposed decision has garnered a lot more attention from local governing bodies, including my community. And I think the reason that has happened is because the current proposed recommended plan would cause clear and obvious harm to the Badger Mill Creek. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of public opposition. One specific aspect of this is the damage it would cause to the brown trout population in the Badger Mill Creek. I'm going to read briefly from an email from DNR fishery staff, which hopefully has been conveyed to you on the topic, and that was obtained through an open records request. Department of Fisheries staff have told MMSD staff that permanently eliminating the effluent stream to Badger Mill Creek will likely have deleterious impacts to the brown trout population and brown trout natural reproduction and recruitment. Since the addition of the MMSD effluent stream, Badger Mill Creek has changed from a warm water forage fish community with stock, catchable, put and take trout into a cool, cold water fish community and a designated Class 2 trout stream with observed natural reproduction and recruitment. Historical data shows the increase in flow and stabilization of temperature has been beneficial to the trout, to the trout population and its abundance in Badger Mill Creek. In addition, some of these emails obtained through the open records request also show that DNR staff was quite clear that the study was too short to accurately assess the biological impacts of turning off the flow. In addition, no study has been done in the Badfish Creek watershed and what potential impact this might have, which I believe that indicates that there might be potential issues with state water quality standards. Ultimately, the only way to address these issues and the phosphorus is either through a treatment plant or adaptive management. From talking to different DNR staff, we believe that DNR staff would be open to adaptive management if seriously pursued. I would also like to step up and offer on behalf of the city of Verona that the city of Verona would be a very willing partner in adaptive management. We know it's difficult, but I'm an environmentalist and I think we should be doing adaptive management stuff anyway. I have been on the other side of these microphones during public hearing.
2:30.
And on occasion, people will ask the city of Verona to do stuff, and then they will completely vanish and not help partner with us. That's not the case in this situation. This room is filled with people, dedicated conservationists, anglers, and other people who would absolutely back up MMSD staff pursuing adaptive management. Another potential option, which people have talked about, is a phosphorus treatment plant. Ultimately, moving the effluent around doesn't address the underlying issue. And I know there are costs associated with the treatment plant. And I know that even if the schedule could be rearranged for ongoing MMSD projects in such a way as to not have a fee increase, it would still result in MMSD staff having to reschedule projects. However, I do think it's the right decision. Ultimately, we're all connected environmentally, and I believe that the correct decision is to address the phosphorus, the root cause, and to not shut off the effluent to the Badger Mill Creek. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Bohannon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Robert Bohannon. I am the president of the board of directors of Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, and I am a recently retired freshwater ecologist from UW-Madison that has done about 30 years worth of research in the Upper Sugar River watershed, including Badger Mill Creek and a number of stormwater ponds. I don't usually use the doctor moniker. I just included that in the field, but I think it's appropriate here because, you know, my goal is to raise questions and then to make evidence-based, data-driven decisions. And I would like to lead with that as an ecologist, as a scientist, I would not have the data in hand that I would be comfortable making the decision that you're being asked to make. Short-term experiments cannot be used to make inferences about long-term implications. And so, yes, it is true that when the effluent was turned off, there was still water in Badger Mill Creek. I don't think anybody really questioned that. And to turn it off for a short time, you're very, very unlikely to see any measurable negative effects. What we did see, and what is a short-term impact that I can tell you does have consequences and will have immediate consequences, is when the return was turned off, the discharge, the amount of water flowing through a unit of time, the cubic feet per second dropped by as much as 50%. Discharge is an important driver of the ecology of streams. It affects the biology, it affects the water chemistry, and it affects the physics. It affects the habitats. And so a long-term reduction of that magnitude in discharge will have negative consequences. I appreciate that we heard this morning, and we heard recently that, you know, we could anticipate commitments to then various things that might mitigate that. And, you know, those projects are appealing, and $1 million is appealing, but I'm still not convinced that we have enough information to be making these decisions. Short-term studies do not allow us to anticipate. And in this scenario, it is incumbent upon us to understand the implications that we're seeing. So there are definitely possibilities. My hope here today is to invite you to consider the information that you would feel confident and comfortable making the decision you're being asked. I have so appreciated working with Kathy Lake over time, helping support outreach and education initiatives. I haven't really worked much with Michael and Marty, but I appreciate Michael's background and commitment to sustainability and Marty's willingness to work with communities. That is in our favor. But you know, it's a hard situation. It's a difficult situation. It is going to require investments. It is going to have cost. And in my experience, efforts that are truly sustainable and forward-looking, they're costly. In the short run, they're costly, but they begin to pay long-term benefits. The effect of reducing discharge will impact ecosystem services, the things that watershed provides that are going to have to be paid at some point by someone. And so I appreciate your time, and I appreciate this forum to be in a room full of people that are just very, very committed.
30 seconds.
To looking ahead. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, please step forward. You have the floor.
Hi. Hi, my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm a 30-year plus resident along Badger Mill Creek in the city of Verona. I also oppose shutting off the water at this time. only because I don't know if it's the correct decision. And I say that based on what a lot of folks here have said. They don't know if you have all the information. Now, I want to give you my background. I'm a retired CPA. Got nothing to do with water, right? But I'm like a lot of people, when I'm trying to learn about something, I look at information. When I raised my questions, I appreciated the responses that Madison Sewer District provided. But then I thought, wait, I have these questions, some of the questions related to Badger Mill Creek, and then some related to Badfish Creek. And the responses basically in some cases said, Badfish Creek doesn't need to be studied because we're not really doing too many changes to the water there. And I thought, well, you studied Badger Mill Creek because you said over 25 years, things change, but you're not studying Badfish Creek because I'm assuming that things might have changed there also. So then when I look at the information, I start to feel a little uneasy because has all the information been looked at? And that's kind of where I stand right now. And so I, like a lot of people, it kind of comes down to a trust issue. And trust is hard earned and easily lost. And so in this case, I kind of want to trust the right decision has been made. And in my case, looking at this, it seems like you either have to answer the different people's questions that they raise about, is the study complete? Is it long enough? All those types of things that I know nothing about, but I'm assuming that people here from Trouts Unlimited, Upper Sugar River Water Association, who are kind of like the watchguards of a lot of this information, that their concerns should be noted. Now, I noticed in many of the responses to people's questions, the response was always our study. Well, I think this is the people of public's water, so that the study must be inclusive to include these other concerns. And if that's not possible, then I say we need to have a referee. You can't say your study shows this and all these other water experts, they have these concerns, and we're going to make this decision based on our study, because it's not your water, it's not your watershed, it's ours. And if we can't come to some consensus by working together, open up your study, have the Wisconsin DNR or some impartial party look at it and say, was it long enough? Was it of sufficient duration? Did it look at everything? Therefore, if they look at that and say, okay, the water should be shut off, it's not going to affect Badger Mill Creek, then I have trust in that decision because an impartial party looked at it. Not to be malicious here, but not a study paid for by the group who's studying something, because you always have the sneaking suspicion that there might be a little bit of bias. They might not have looked at this. So that would be my request on that issue. My second request is when you speak of the $1 million, that there be a little more detail put around that, making sure that if it's $1 million, it's a firm commitment. It's not going to change on this factor, this factor, and this factor. Again, it all gets back to the trust issue, and it's something we either all have to work together on, or we're not going to have results that we're all comfortable with. Thank you very much.
Before Mr. Geffield speaks, I would like to call the next three to mic 2, please. That'll be Mr. John Sales, Mark Mayeff, and Brian Fairbrother, please, on deck. Mr. Geffield, you have the floor.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Steve Gaffield. I'm a water resources engineer with Emmons and Oliveira Resources here in Madison. We are hired by the district to perform this short-term study looking at hydrologic habitat impacts if the effluent were to be shut off, and then to infer what we can about the long-term implications of that. I have 31 years of experience with groundwater and surface water hydrology, PhD in geological engineering from UW-Madison, and back in 2007, was involved in a hydrologic study on Badger Mill Creek for the city of Verona, looking at some similar issues. The mission here was to evaluate observable changes and low flow conditions that occurred this winter with and without the effluent return. And observations were made before the experimental shutdown in January and after it was shut down to zero in February. We looked at 5 locations on Badger Mill Creek and 2 in the Sugar River. There's a map in your handout packet, figure 1, that has those locations on them. The measurement techniques, parameters, we developed consulting with DNR fisheries staff. Again, it focused on stream flow, physical water depth, water width, channel bottom materials, water temperature. The effluent reduction was about 5 cubic feet per second. 4.8 is the typical discharge for the district. That went down to 0. We observed similar flow changes as you would expect at all of the monitoring sites. As was pointed out, at some sites that was 50% reduction in flow. In fact, the most notable changes that were observed, as would be expected, were the headwater site, Badger Mill Creek at Old Highway PB, labeled BM5 on your map, closest to the return line. Discharge there went down from 6 cubic feet per second to 0.04 cubic feet per second. Stream width reduced by about 2 feet. The water depth reduced by about 35% from a little over a foot deep to about half a foot deep. Again, this is at the head of a pool at that site. And the average velocity of the water at that site went down from 1/4 of a foot per second.
30.
Thank you. To just 100th of a foot per second. As you go downstream, changes were less notable. For instance, the water depth at the change at the other sites ranged from 0.1 feet to 0.2 feet. Temperature, there's also a plot in your handout on water temperature. With the effluent running, the Badger Mill Creek monitoring site at Bruce Street for USGS was about 5 degrees warmer than the Sugar River. Remember, this was cold winter conditions, so this is reflecting the stabilizing warmer temperature of the district's effluent. When it was shut down, the 2 streams, Sugar River, Badger Mill Creek, very similar temperatures, reflecting weather conditions. Thinking about how frequently these conditions would occur, historically, we looked at USGS stream flow records. We understand it's been well documented many places. There's been an overall increasing trend in stream flow and precipitation in southern Wisconsin over several decades. As has been pointed out, there's a cyclical nature of wetter and drier periods overlaying on that pattern. Figure 4 in your handout has the USGS stream flow record. Badger Mill Creek, over the 23 years that USGS has been collecting it, the red highlights, and this is in the report for people without a handout, the red highlights show conditions that were as low flow or lower than were observed this winter. Those conditions were without the effluent, those conditions would have been quite common through year 2015. The last 7 years, they only occurred about 3% of days per year as it has been wetter. The Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts is projecting an increasing rainfall trend to continue in Wisconsin. About a 5% annual increase, both in the form of extreme events and prolonged wet periods through the middle of the century. So we'd expect that this continued increase in stream flow with wet and dry variations overlaying on top of that will continue for several decades based on those projections. Finally, I'll just add, as has been mentioned, there are other strategies to help boost the resilience of this watershed using green infrastructure that are relevant with or without the effluent return, regardless of this decision. Thank you.
Next to speak, Mr. Sales, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is John Sales. I'm a retired farmer who has lived in the Sugar River Basin my entire life. I'm a member of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association and their farmer group. I have also made recreational use of the river since I was a child. I am concerned about the continued health of the Sugar River system. I've used records kept by the United States Geological Survey and the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District in an effort to determine whether the flow in Badger Mill Creek will be reduced to dangerously low level, destructive of fish life if MMSD diverts water taken from the Sugar River Basin to the Yahara Basin. Review of these records suggests that at least in the less than 30 years that the river has been diverted, there have already been one such period. You have a handout that should on one side say Badger Mill Creek, low flow comparison chart, and on the other side, Badger Mill Creek, low flow comparison chart, 2-week breakout. The first chart, the Badger Mill Creek low flow comparison chart, includes the low flow data from the Bruce Street, Verona USGS gauge house using the lowest flow for each calendar year since 1997, side by side with the discharge amounts in the same date from MMSD. All numbers are in cubic feet per second. The second chart checks immediately the surrounding dates to see if the very low flow lasted over a somewhat longer period. That's on the back side of the paper. Review of these records suggests that in the early 2000s, the flow would have been dangerously low, as noted in October 5, 2003, October 23, 2005, and August 13, 2006. It appears that the data for surrounding days has been dangerous for that these dangerously low flows would not have been very brief period events, but would have continued for an appreciable period of time. It is essential to the health of Badger Mill Creek and to the Sugar River Basin as a whole that the basin's water remain in the basin to keep water levels sustainable over long term. And an analysis that looks at only a short term does not capture the information necessary to make a responsible decision about the effect of permanent removal of water from the system. The previous speaker employed by the MMSD stated that there's a projection for continued increase in rainfall. There is going to be dramatic increase in variability due to climate change. Having lived through the 1988 drought as a farmer, I can assure you that all the wetlands that have been referred to as contributing to the Badger Mill Creek would dry up in that event. And if we look even further back to 1975, when we only had 20 inches of rain, which is an arid condition in this area, all of those infiltration sources would have dried up and we would be solely reliant on groundwater to sustain Badger Mill Creek. And as my data shows, in this 30-year period, the creek would have come to dangerously low levels. My more highly educated colleagues told me that I wasn't supposed to use dried up, so I didn't use dried up. But it would be at a dangerously low level. Thank you very much, and thank you for this hearing.
Mr. Maffett, you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Mark Maffett, and I'm the president of the Southern Wisconsin chapter of Trout Unlimited. Trout Unlimited is a volunteer-driven organization with over 900 members in South Central Wisconsin, primarily in Dane County. Our mission is to bring together diverse interests to care for and recover rivers and streams so our children can experience the joy of wild and native trout. Badger Mill Creek is a rare urban trout stream that is highly accessible to anglers of all ages, interests, and angling techniques. The Southern Wisconsin Trout Unlimited Board of Directors has voted unanimously to oppose discontinuation of highly treated MMSD effluent into Badger Mill Creek because we're deeply concerned that disrupting the flow of Badger Mill Creek will have a deleterious effect on trout populations in the stream. Our concerns are shared by highly trained and competent fisheries experts. We learned from an open records request that DNR staff believe that discontinuing the flow of effluent into the creek would harm the trout populations in Badger Mill Creek. In an April email from David Rao, the DNR, to Kathy Lake and Marty Griffin, and I'm going to quote, we've heard this before, but it bears repeating. From David Rao, Department Fisheries staff have told MMSD staff that permanently eliminating the effluent stream to Badger Mill Creek will likely have deleterious impacts to the brown trout population and brown trout natural reproduction and recruitment. Since the addition of the MMSD effluent stream, Badger Mill Creek has changed from a warm water forage fish community with stocked catchable size split and take trout into a cold water fish community and a designated Class 2 trout stream with observed natural reproduction and recruitment. Historical data shows the increase in flow and stabilization of temperature has been beneficial to the trout population and its abundance in Badger Mill Creek. Trout thrive in streams that are dominated by groundwater inputs in the stream flow, and temperatures are more stable. The effluent stream mimics a groundwater spring and contributes warmer, stable water into the winter and colder water in the summer. More flow also means a greater volume of water, so it is more resistant to thermal changes in both winter and summer. Mimicking air temperatures is not a good thing, especially as the climate continues to warm and become more variable.
30.
The statement that being being colder in winter is good for trout is incorrect. When streams become too cold, several environmental stressors become risk factors for trout. Stream temps can drop below thermal preferences for adult trout, meaning they are spending all of their energy maintaining body conditions instead of growing, and this happens around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. He goes on to talk about frazzle ice and bottom ice, both of which are deleterious to the trout population. And that's the end of that quote from David Rowe. Badger Mill Creek has come a long way. The current stream conditions are fabulous for trout, and interrupting the flow of effluent would indeed harm trout populations. An enormous amount of money and effort has been invested in trout habitat improvements to this stream by the DNR, Dane County, the City of Verona, the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, Trout Unlimited, and others. It is imperative to the future success of this rare jewel that the effluent flow continue. I also urge you to consider that the Dane County Board of Supervisors, the City of Verona, the Town of Montrose, and the Village of Belleville have all unanimously passed resolutions to voice opposition to the discontinued flow of effluent. Rather than to make an ill-advised knee-jerk decision to shut off the flow as a means of reducing phosphate emissions, I urge you to consider adaptive management as one of your options. An adaptive management plan would be given 20 years to prove its efficacy, and even if the plan didn't reach its full goal, the amount of phosphate delivered to the watershed would surely decline greatly. And at the end of those 20 years, phosphate removal technologies would surely have improved. So please do not disrupt the flow. Develop an adaptive management plan and give it a shot.
30 seconds.
The communities served by this lovely stream deserve better than what you are currently proposing. Thank you.
Before we hear from Mr. Fairbrother, I'd like to call the three next guests to mic 1. Gail Simpson, Rick Whiterson, Brian Christian, please. Mr. Fairbrother, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. I am Brian Fairbrother. I have a historical perspective I'd like to share with you, and I will get to 2 points on compliance for phosphorus for Badfish and Badger Mill Creek. Thank you for your help with the mic. grew up within 30 miles of Madison, spent most of my 70 years working, going to school here, and enjoying all of the wonderful things that one can do in this area. First started at UW-Madison in 1971, bought a bicycle from Yellow Jersey Co-op. Some of you might be old enough to remember that existed at one time. And I enjoyed taking bike rides down to Paoli and riding along the Sugar River. That spring, I saw an article from the DNR that the Sugar River was a great warm water fishery and had a good population of smallmouth bass. I'd never caught a smallmouth bass, so with my bicycle, being student poor, I could ride down there with a spinning rod, get permission from farmers to fish. And yes, I could catch bass, panfish, an occasional walleye. And if I used worms, I was catching carp. I'll fast forward to the 80s when I got involved with Trout Unlimited and the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, doing stream improvements on the West Branch and the main branch of the Sugar River. Suddenly that river I fished now had trout, and I wasn't catching smallmouth bass anymore. But I gravitated to trout fishing because trout are the canary in the mine as far as surface water in the world. They require clean water, cold water to survive. So the cleanest place you can catch fish is a trout stream. So I was delighted to see the Sugar River change. I'll go to the Badfish Creek for a little bit of history. Fished a tributary to the Badfish Creek many times, and just a couple decades ago, there was a gentleman fishing right at the edge of the stream in a
2:30.
Got it. He could not walk. His son had carried him there and set him by the bridge to fish. I talked with him for a while, and he mentioned the Badfish Creek in the 1950s before it was effluent discharge for SD, sorry. It was as good a trout stream as Black Earth Creek, but it was degraded and didn't hold trout. I think it does now. I've never fished it. But I illustrate that just in terms of what we do with our water affects what can live in it. Over the years, I've been able to enjoy a lot of investments by Dane County Parks, cities, the DNR, that have gotten easements and purchases along a lot of the waterways we're talking about that have improved the habitat for trout. A couple years ago, I got a recommendation to try Badger Mill from a DNR rep. I had known that as kind of a muddy tributary to the Sugar River. I immediately started catching trout. I was delighted. There's been a lot of investments by cities, by county, by DNR to improve the waterways in southern Wisconsin, particularly Dane County. Whatever the stakeholders and decision makers do with Badger Mill Creek, I hope they take recommendations from all the people here that are saying we need more information before we make a quick decision.
30 seconds.
The other thing I'd like to mention is all of the discussion here, the limited time I've had to look on the websites, I've seen very little about the introduction of phosphorus into our sewage district. As a systems engineer, I was always helping companies look at what's causing your problems and let's go upstream and work on the cause. I hope that you incorporate that in a full way. So as we grow, we reduce the inputs of phosphorus. We don't have to worry about the treatment of them then. Thank you.
Hello,
Miss-
thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Gail Simpson. I'm a resident of Rutland Township and a member of Preserve Our Rural Landscape, and I'm here today to speak up on behalf of the Badfish Creek. I'm a recreational user of the Badfish Creek and the surrounding DNR property, and I'm opposed to this proposal, which seems to make the Badfish a sacrificial waterway rather than investing in better treatment solutions. If you've driven around Rutland, and if you haven't, I hope you'll take the opportunity to do that. You'll see that on the west side of Stoughton, there is massive development happening, hundreds of acres. These are much needed houses, but it's also habitat loss. You'll also see, if you drive around Rutland, the consolidation of farm fields, which means tearing out tree lines. Every week we see new ones, new examples of that. And these are also examples of a time of great habitat destruction. The Badfish is home to federally protected waterfowl, as well as a great deal of other wildlife. And a deterioration of the water quality means a deterioration of the habitat. And this is during a time when there's a great deal of habitat destruction, so we really can't afford to lose any more. And it will also have unintended consequences down the road. Recreationally, like I said, I'm a frequent user of the stream and the DNR property. And in addition to the kayaks and the boating that Lynn had mentioned earlier, I also, every time I use that property, I see people fishing and people swimming in there. And that water has an odor, a distinctive odor, and not a natural one. The water stains your clothes and it stains your dog. I can speak from personal experience. So I'm asking you to please consider the technology for better treatment options. Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Whiterson, you have the floor.
Rick Wiederson, Rock County Public Health Department. I'm the Environmental Health Director there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Although Rock County is not represented on this commission, I would argue that when it comes to effluent, Rock County probably is the most impacted jurisdiction of anybody, with 165,000 people receiving all of the effluent in one way or another, either from the Sugar River or the Badfish. Unfortunately, we were not contacted in any type of outreach regarding this decision, and I do feel that we need to have some input. Overall, the phosphorus is the main issue that you're considering, but I think you really need to consider the big picture and what else is in the effluent other than the phosphorus. I'd like to talk about three things. One is the water quantity issue. One is the erosion issues. And the third is the water quality issues that are impacting Rock County. When it comes to the water quantity concerns with the Badfish Creek, the natural flow is exceeded. Basically, the natural flow is the current flow of the Badfish is double the natural flow. That stream has been abused from a quantity perspective for 65 years. When staff reports recommendations on this decision bring up that the Badfish will not be impacted, I would argue that it will be. This decision will result in 4.8 cubic feet per second additional flow. Now that may be averaged out, but over an annual period, that's 1 billion additional gallons that would be diverted to the Badfish, billion with a B. So that will impact the quantity flowing down the Badfish. We've done a lot of studies at the health department on impacts to the Badfish. We've got 20 plus years of data. We've shared some of that data with MMSD. We'd like an opportunity to share more data to show the impacts to the Badfish, not just phosphorus.
2:30.
The erosional concerns. Over the 65 plus years that the Badfish has received a majority of the effluent, much of Dane County's portion of the Badfish has been modified, channelized, straightened. If you look at a map, just take a look at the Rock County portion. Rock County portion of the Badfish is very meandered still in natural flow patterns. That natural flow pattern and meandering is subject to erosion, and severe bank erosion is occurring in Rock County. Additional flow, additional billion gallons a year will cause additional erosion. Water quality. It was mentioned that there wouldn't be any changes in water quality. I would argue that the concentration maybe won't change, but the loading rates will. E. coli has been a big issue that's been brought up. There will be additional E. coli put into the Badfish on an annual basis. During periods of 3 months during the year, the effluent is not disinfected. We monitor E. coli levels in Rock County. If that was a beach, we'd be closing it for 3 months. Phosphorus loading, that's the big issue. There'll be more pounds of phosphorus going down the Badfish. Chloride is not meeting current DNR regulations. There'll be more pounds of chloride going down the Badfish. Dissolved oxygen would likely decrease. Temperature would likely increase, causing aquatic life issues. Nitrogen loading would increase. Metal loading would increase, including mercury, which is currently not meeting DNR regulations. A lot of these issues have not been adequately looked at. I encourage you to look at the big picture, not just phosphorus, look at all of the impacts to not only the Badger Mill Creek, but also to the Badfish Creek. Thank you.
Before we hear from Mr. Christian, I'd like to call the next people to microphone 2. And at this time, since I don't have a full on deck, I would like to ask that besides these 2 individuals, if there's anybody present in the room who wishes to speak, we will need to make sure you are registered beforehand, and then you can also be on deck at microphone 2. So those people going to microphone 2 are Mr. Andy Morton and Pat Bergen. Jessica of our staff, could you please stand? If anybody else has not registered and is in person and wishes to speak today, I need you to make your way outside the room and register with Jessica, and then you can line up here at microphone 2. Thank you. Mr. Christian, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning. Thanks so much for allowing me to present my point of view with respect to this issue, which will be to oppose the discontinuing of the effluent to Badger Mill Creek. I am a 30+ year resident of Verona. My property backs up to the green space where Badger Mill Creek runs. I'm also on the steering committee of a friends group for the Badger Mill Creek Environmental Corridor. And I'm also a member of the coalition to protect the Badger Mill Creek. As a friends group member, the Badger Mill Creek runs through a green space from east to west in Verona that is really a beautiful area. There are a number of trails which traverse the area, multi-use paths for hiking, biking. The Ice Age Trail runs through there. The Ice Age Trail, as well as the hiking trails, run right adjacent on the banks of the Badger Mill Creek. It is a very heavily used trail and highly valued trail. It's really the only place in Verona where people are able to get a connection with nature. And so it's really worth preserving. And we know right now, under the current conditions, that the stream is healthy. And this is based on the recently published DNR study, where it was classified as a class 2 trout stream with some features of class 1. And in addition, they recommended further efforts to improve the creek. And those things have been done. The city of Verona, Dane County, has invested in stream bank, in-stream structures. And many volunteer groups have spent a lot of time and effort improving that corridor. So this is why it was so shocking that when the study was done in February, myself and some others were doing some restoration work, and we saw the levels, how low the levels were, and we saw that the in-stream structures put in place in 2021 were completely above the water line. And I know in some of the information that was provided, you folks, I think it was attachment 3, there was some discussion in there about these structures not necessarily needing to be or not impacted by the low water levels.
230.
Well, the structures are not intended to be completely submerged, but they do need to be partially submerged to produce their effect. And they were clearly above the water line. So that was concerning. With any complex issue like this, and as we've heard discussed, we never have all the information that we need to make decisions. But what we do have are the unanimous opinions from subject matter experts. Experts who have the educational background and the experience to evaluate the ecology of streams, including DNR folks, and they're in unanimous agreement about the likely detrimental, degradative impacts of removing the effluent. Just a couple other quick comments. One about climate change. I noticed also in the packet that you have, there were some graphs about groundwater and flow that stopped at 2018. And that is that period that was referenced where we had 6 or 7 years, very wet years. 2021, however, was the driest year in Madison since 1989. And there's a clear trend in groundwater base flow reduction from about 2020 to the beginning of 2023. With respect to cost, it's very appropriate to look at cost, but everything worthwhile is at some cost. Similarly, energy, everybody here in support of maintaining the flow are environmentally oriented and they want to reduce the green or carbon footprint. However, when one looks at that, I think it's important also to look at the benefit that that energy is used in protecting the
30
environment.
seconds.
If we were to extrapolate the cost and carbon footprint arguments out, I guess we wouldn't have our park systems because everything requires money and takes energy. So finally, I would just like to compliment the district for taking such good care of our wastewater. You really produce a great product. And this is evidence as an environmental success story in Badger Mill Creek. Let's keep it up. Thank you.
Next to the mic is Mr. Morton.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Andy Morton. I'm speaking as a Trout Unlimited member. I have a brief written comments I'd like to read. We join with others and support the continued efforts to legally maintain the existing flow to Badger Mill Creek and effectively control phosphorus, including additional treatment, pollutant trading, or adaptive management. Recognizing that the long-standing public investment in this resource and its importance to users and residents of Verona, Dane County, and the region. I just wanted to make sure I read that and was succinct, recognizing the time limit. However, as I came here and listened to other comments, several things stood out. And I want to say that I retired from over 36 years working with the Department of Natural Resources, and I held several positions in water quality, water management, fisheries, directly involved with many controversies, everything from enforcement issues, various conflicts. So I have been on the other side of your side of the room, and I want to say that I really appreciate the commission and having lived in Dane County since the 70s, how you have stewarded water resources and has always been an advocate and very directly involved in maintaining the wonderful water quality we have. So I want to echo other comments that have been made about taking the long view, thoughtfulness. And I know that you all are hearing these comments just from, that's how you all operate and have operated, and take this very seriously. Clean water is costly. And I also reflected thinking, in 10 years, what will people remember? Especially the people who've invested a lot of time and effort in Badger Mill Creek.
2:30.
I remember when there was no effluent, added from MMSD. I remember that, and like others have said, it wasn't the quality of the creek. It didn't have the same water quality, and it wasn't the quality resource it is now. But in 10 years, will people think about that? How the quality, and when people in Verona in the area are using the creek, either by a trail or recreationally as an angler or paddler or whatever, or will they think about the cost financially? So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the effort I know you're putting in to work this through.
One moment for the next speaker, please. Mr. Pat Bergen.
And before I start, I put together a talking point presentation for, I know, I will be there.
Do you have these? Does the commission have these?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
I have a talking point handout I've given to you so you can help follow along, and you started my time before I'm ready. And I also asked the commissioners to look over these pictures I gave you. So if you have those, that would be good. Okay, now I'd like to start. It took 6 years of water return from MMSD before the Badger Mill Creek became a class 2 trout stream in 2008, meaning that natural reproduction of trout was there, but it still needed stocking. And with the additional waters that MMSD claims we now have attributes of a class 1 trout stream, meaning high quality trout water that has sufficient natural reproduction to sustain populations of wild trout near carry capacity. Picture 1 that you see here shows the Badger Mill Creek, what it looks like with the water shut off. Picture 2 does as well. Picture 1 illustrates our stream flow control and trout habitat structures are useless and out of the water. Picture 2 shows mud and sticks out of the water. Compare picture 3 with our water returning, with the sticks partially submerged, with picture 2 with no water. And picture 4 is upstream right along the Ice Age Trail with our water flowing. Now imagine if the water weren't flowing, what that would look like. Do you know that 94% of the written comments that you received are in favor of keeping the water flowing in the Badger Mill Creek? Are you aware that there were numerous additional comments and pictures MMSD requested from people that are not being shown and that likely favor keeping the water flowing? Why are we here? Timeliness. This is the key. MMSD only presented cost estimates in the past few weeks. Had they presented these cost estimates last year, we might have had time to work together to find solutions such as grants or to cover these fixed costs from neighboring communities, Dane County, state of Wisconsin, and federal government. Right now, there could even possibly be some COVID money that might be available for pollution problem. How many grants has MMSD actually applied for? Could we lower the cost with creative financing such as tax-free municipal bonds?
2:30.
How about streamlining the administration cost to cover operational expense? Perhaps you could reprioritize some of your projects to a later time. Based on my homeowner's water bill, my cost would go up like 90 cents to $1.50 a month, depending upon what you use that. And
And to control this, to spend this money would make a lot of people happy. Timeliness, the stream health survey only covered a few months versus a possible few years worth of data. Future stream climatology modeling could have used a full year's data for projections as if this would have been done anytime in the last 2 years. Now we're all being jammed trying to make a decision here in a month, and that's not right. The chief engineer and director is expected to support conditions and procedures and decisions that are safe and timely. Do you really want to rush this decision because of a created time constraint? Can you honestly say you've exhausted every means to try and find solutions to keep the water flowing? Are you 100% certain that MMSD's short-term conclusions? What are the effects on our class 2+ trout stream? Do you really want the responsibility and possible accountability for the destruction of a high-value class 2+ trout stream in the middle of Verona? Remember, MMSD promised not to harm the stream. You know, Michael has said, anything can be accomplished if you have the public working with you. He wants to build public trust through sustainability, meaning availability of fresh water. Well, Dane County asked you through a unanimous vote by our county representatives to find a way to keep the water flowing. All the communities that receive the water want to keep the water coming.
30 seconds.
All the people I've talked to want to keep the water flowing. The vast majority of written comments want to keep the water flowing. We, the people of Dane County, are an ecological society. This is an opportunity to lead the way to solve the problem of this phosphorus pollution and not just push this phosphorus water off in a different direction. If MMSD truly shares a sentiment of wanting to ensure the Badger Mill Creek remains healthy, the only way 100% to ensure the health of the Badger Mill Creek is to clean up the water and keep the water flowing. Thank you.
Again, I extend to the room. Is there anybody present who has yet to speak? Last call. That concludes the
Okay.
portion.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and for attending to the issue at hand. We'll take a 5 to 10 minute break and then proceed with the comments from our Zoom listeners. Does that make sense to everybody? We've been at about 1 hour and 40 minutes so far. So we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break and let people stretch their legs. And then we'll come back at about 9:50 or so. And so thank you, everybody. We will now move to the Zoom portion of the public comment. So I guess they'll be appearing on the screen if they have video, correct? And the first comment Janelle's going to read because the person was having audio issues.
For all those out in Zoom, this is how we are going to conduct the virtual portion. Today, I have one gentleman that is having some audio issues. I will read his statement for record, and then I will call upon the next person on deck, who is Rick Eilertson. You will be following me today in Zoom. I will, between guests, call one person on deck, and then I will call you to speak when it is your time in Zoom. This first individual, the name for the record is Arnold Jennerman, and I will read his statement. I, Arnold Jennerman, live at 7621 Marshview Road in Verona. I am a farmer and a member of the Farmers for the Upper Sugar River. My comments echo what we are hearing in opposition to this proposal out of concern for loss redirection of this water from the Sugar River watershed. With that, that was the end of his comment. Thank you. Next, through Zoom, we will hear from Rick Eilertson. Pat Downing virtually will be on deck.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rick Eilertson. I'm a member of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association. I volunteered as a member of the Madison Area Municipal Stormwater Partnership Information and Education Committee for the last 21 years. I serve as a stream monitoring volunteer for several creeks in Dane County. And then I also, relevant to today's discussion, I have had the privilege of serving as Fitchburg's environmental engineer for 10 years from 2006 to 2017. And I appreciated the discussion that Greg Freese was able to leave on stay-in infiltration volume during last week's commission meeting. That's definitely something that I've spent a lot of time in over the past 15 years of my life. One of the stories that I want to share with you today is right about the time that I started as Fitchburg's environmental engineer in 2006. The Fitchburg Super Target was under discussion for construction. That's in the headwaters of the Badger Mill Creek, and there's a lot of concerns over stormwater. One of the interesting things that the designer, Montgomery Associates, along with Mayo Corporation, was able to incorporate into the design is a large wet stormwater pond, which I call the Nesbitt Heights wet pond, and then 3 large infiltration cells just downstream of that in the Nesbitt Heights area along Nesbitt Road. One of the interesting things about that project is not only did it meet the stay-on infiltration volume requirements at that time, right when 2006's Dane County infiltration requirements went into effect, but it actually infiltrates all of the water. So there's no surface water discharge from that particular area. So one of the things that created was high elevated groundwater in the Fitch-Verona Road area, and that has since as former city of Fitchburg planner Tom Hovell can attest, in 2009 the parking lot for the Quarry Ridge Recreation Area went underwater because the groundwater table elevated in that area. The city waited about a year to hoping that it would go down. It didn't, and then decided to build the parking lot higher to basically so that people didn't have to park in the water. One of the things that's happened over the last 15 years in that area is the groundwater table has gone from about 5 feet deep to about 1.5 feet deep below the surface of Fitch-Verona Road. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvements in both to help solve some of the high groundwater in that local vicinity by either pumping it into a pipe, whether it be the current effluent return line or a separate pumped system, or even a gravity system that would help replace some of the water that it would be able to go to Badger Mill Creek that's currently trapped in the groundwater table. So a lot of opportunities, I think, with potential improvements in that area that could also help keep the Badger Mill Creek thriving if the district and the municipalities in the area work together on potential solutions. So appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Next to speak will be Pat Downing. Wade Motor virtually will be on deck.
Well, good morning, everyone. How do you do? My name is Patrick Downing. I, on the Dane County Board, represent the southwest corner of Dane County, which everywhere from Mount Horeb down to Belleville, which includes the Upper Sugar River watershed. Let me start by saying hello, Tom Wilson. Glad to see you're here. The towns really appreciate having at least one representative on this commission. And I know you'll do well for us. Wow, what an impressive round of speakers we have just heard. I would like to begin by just expanding somewhat on the comments that I wrote to you all and give you some context to them. Recently, well, it was only recently that concerned citizens made me aware of this issue. And upon hearing them, I prevailed upon my Environment, Agriculture, Natural Resources Committee to convene a presentation which included an MMSD representative on this issue. We heard from the likes of Top Wells, who you heard today, who served as Kathleen Falk's Chief of Staff, knows this area well. Lindsay Foy of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, John Sales, who has credentials as a University of Wisconsin researcher, Luke Diaz, the Verona mayor, Bob Bohannon, who you heard from earlier, and Pat Bergen, who all questioned the rationale and the conclusions that MMSD has used and reached. I'm here to ask you to please respect the resolutions passed by the Dane County Board of Supervisors, the City of Verona, Village of Belleville, and the Town of Montrose, opposing the diversion of water from the Upper Sugar River watershed to the Yahara River watershed and reducing the water levels of the Sugar River. Although MMSD states it has the community's interest in mind, these municipalities do not see that. Disconcerting to me is that while MMSD has, in their own words, asked interested citizen scientists to record observations, they went on to state, again, their own words, the observations were not used to determine a final recommendation. I think Dane County's resolution sums it up best when it says, be it resolved, the county board encourages MMSD to collect stakeholder input, and any stakeholder and citizen is encouraged to participate. As Top Wells explained to us earlier, we have plenty of time. Be it further resolved, the county board encourages MMSD to find a solution to phosphorus pollution in Badger Mill Creek that maintains the flow of the Badger Mill Creek, protects the creek's ecosystem, respects the county, local government, private, nonprofit, and volunteer investments made in the creek and the surrounding area.
30 seconds.
Please take these advisories to heart and represent us well. Thank you.
Next on Zoom, we have Wade Motor, followed by Kim Hins on deck. Mr. Motor, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Wade Motor. I'm the former executive director of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association of about 9 years prior to Lindsay, who spoke earlier today. Whatever decision is made by the commission on May 25th, it won't be made with even the most basic data needed to understand the impacts on Badger Mill Creek. As Mayor Diaz mentioned, through a public records request, we learned that DNR biologists informed MMSD staff that a proper understanding of Badger Mill Creek would come from a scenario-based analysis over a 2-year study. And even just a 1-year study that covered the warm weather seasons would have provided some much needed insight. What happens in the middle of July during a drought when over 50% of the water is lost? Does the temperature go over 70 degrees in the creek? Does the diversity of the biotic index decline? What happens in the face of climate change when average temperatures are rising long-term? 2 degrees warmer, 5 degrees warmer? What are the results of the scenario-based climate modeling? These are all the things DNR has access to and has offered, and I would challenge the commission to ask MMSD staff for these answers. Instead, what we received is a 2-week study in February when the temperatures are low and the biota in the creek is at its absolute lowest. I asked Marty Griffin at the Town of Verona board meeting in February why 10 years after phosphorus standards became law that we're at this meeting without any data or findings to talk about. Marty corrected me and said that they really only understood the situation for the last 5 years. So I suppose I'll ask again. After 5 years, why are we at a public meeting on May 11th, 2023, 14 days before a final decision is going to be made? And the only concrete answers we've seen on this came at the April 27th commission meeting. Time after time through this process, we, the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, had to inform stakeholders who for the first time learned about what's at stake, which sounds like a familiar story, what's happening in the Rock River Basin and what Supervisor Pat mentioned earlier. That includes Dane County, Joe Parisi's office, along with every municipality in our watershed. As a small anecdote to the story, we learned there's a few keys that kind of tipped us off that this process would be going this way, but one that really stuck with us was in October, prior to the public meetings that were held in December. There were some press releases put out, sponsored Facebook ads. None of them mentioned a thing about eliminating the flow to Badger Mill Creek. They only talked about the positives, what MMSD is going to be doing for Badger Mill Creek. And even in the public meetings, and there were 2 of them, staff gave a 20-minute presentation, and there was still never a mention about eliminating the flow to Badger Mill Creek. We had to continually bring it up, even at their own meetings. Throughout this whole process, we felt like this has just been an exercise in running out the clock. Time after time, this has felt like a narrative that had already been written in search of data to back it up. Finally, just as an observation, the validity of science has taken a lot of hits lately. I didn't think in Dane County we'd have to be at a meeting like this, hat in hand, and asking for the most basic data analysis before deciding the future of the most vulnerable ecological community left in Wisconsin, according to UW Madison ecologists, which is the cold water trout stream. And that's the case we're in today. Thanks for your time.
Before we hear from Ms. Hins on Zoom, we will have Mr. O'Brien on deck These are the last two people that I currently have on Zoom as registered speakers. If you are attending virtually and you would like to speak, just direct message Lynn Coleman in the Zoom chat. Once again, if you are attending virtually, please direct message Lynn Coleman if you would like to speak in Zoom today. With that, Ms. Hins, you have the floor. Mr. O'Brien, you are on deck. Ms. Hins, you have the floor. We had a registered speaker of Kim Hins. I do see a Daryl Hins is attending virtually. Mr. Daryl Hins, would you like to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, my wife had signed up and had to leave earlier, I think. I just wanted to register in opposition to turning off the flow to the Badger Mill Creek and maintaining that the quality of that trout stream, and to find a better alternative to address the phosphorus limits. Thank you for your time.
Mr. O'Brien, James O'Brien, you have the floor.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yes, I'm here as another member of Southern Wisconsin Trout Unlimited, agreeing with all our previous speakers that we really need to reevaluate this, and please try not to reduce the flow in Badger Mill Creek. Couple of reasons. It's one of the few strong class 2 streams I'm aware of that's also in an urban area, providing a lot of access to youth in the area. And fishing is a great molder of youth, helper of youth. And of course, for me, it was great when I was growing up. I also want to commend MMSD for hooking us up with this system. Still getting used to these new things. I'm glad I was able to click it on. I don't know if you're supposed to see me too, but and I also want to thank MMSD that they're in the world of trying to reduce phosphorus in general. Specifically, I'm thinking of a man named Dan Egan, who's written a book, Phosphorus, the Devil's Element. And I hadn't read the whole book, but I heard him do an interview. And it's another one of those double-edged swords things that you can't live with, but you can't live without. And to me, the way you've got it going right now, unlike how you usually handle things, you're almost doing a sort of sleight of hand trick to deal with phosphorus right now, and not really attacking the problem as it needs to be attacked. And there's going to be costs in the future from not dealing with not phosphorus now. So that's another point I want to make. And I hope we do work together to come up with better solutions than possibly damaging this wonderful resource near Verona, a part of Verona too. And thank you very much.
With that, I would like to make a last call. Anybody attending via Zoom who cares to speak? With that, this concludes the virtual portion of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoom speakers and those in attendance. Still, I will now call the public hearing closed on the Badger Mill Creek phosphorus compliance solution. And that will move us to topic 4B, which is commission discussion on final Badger Mill Creek phosphorus compliance. So I think one thing I would like to address first before we get to comments is the comment period that Tup Wells brought up. And we cannot tell people not to make comments to the district.
Right.
But I would suggest if people are willing or desirous of making more comments, that they should be submitted to the district electronically, preferably by the end of the day on Sunday, so that the staff have time to look at them on Monday and incorporate that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I think so. I had the same thought when Mr. Wells made that comment, and yeah, I think we should encourage people to submit their comments in a timely fashion so that all the commission members have an opportunity to read the comments and to digest everything as part of the packet that goes out for our next meeting. But I mean, if people submit comments to the district, they're public comments and should be part of the public record and should be made available to the commission as soon as possible, regardless of when they're submitted, prior to our decision being made. Does that make sense to people?
So if you desire to make comment, you can make comments, and we would ask that you try to get them in by Sunday, and those can be addressed with the packet of information that will be supplied. I can't say that anything submitted after Sunday would necessarily be addressed, but I think staff would try to do their best to attend to those matters. Okay, so that being completed, do we have anybody that wants to begin on the discussion of the matter?
So Wilson, I will.
Go ahead, Tom.
Again, thank everybody that was on Zoom and was here and spoke. Very appreciative. You know, there were certain themes certainly that ran throughout the comments, and that's good. I think that, you know, our staff did a great job, frankly, of looking at all the information that we needed to see, and we heard a lot of these same concerns, but staff needed to come up with a recommendation, and they did. And it's our job to sift through all this information and figure out what we want to do as a commission. And I don't know that I have real comments because I'm still trying to soak in some of these points that were pretty clear, but I had some questions. And Tom, is that appropriate to ask? Okay. So the first question I had was on this DNR timing, and trying to give them a choice of our chosen option for treatment by the end of the month. And I guess I had two thoughts on that. One, is there any kind of penalty or concern that we raise if we tell the DNR, you know, we've gotten all this information and we need more time to digest this, and here's our options, and we're still looking at this, we're not ready to respond, and we don't give them something by the 31st. Other than that, what is the risk of, or the potential outfall or damages that we have? And maybe that's probably a Paul question, but it could be a Marty or Michael question too.
Well, let me answer it this way. There is a compliance schedule in our permit, and the compliance schedule very clearly establishes the deadline of May 31st. So if we do not comply with that, we will be out of compliance with the permit. Now, in theory, that could lead to some kind of enforcement action. I think as a practical matter, you know, that's unlikely. But it depends upon how long it goes. I mean, I've been aware that, you know, if compliance, if you remain in non-compliance for an extended period of time, enforcement will follow. And I've unfortunately over my career had to defend some of those. So there's probably a practical leeway. I guess I would say the other thing though is that those deadlines are not completely arbitrary, because the ultimate compliance date, which is much more of hard and fast kind of deadline, is there. And that's based upon, if we're going to build, allowing enough time for the engineering to be done. If we're going to do adaptive management, allowing the time for that to proceed. So that if we are, looking at 6 months down the road, we've now taken 6 months out of the time we need to be doing our other kinds of compliance things. So there is that practical aspect of this time as well.
Right. So, but there's nothing that prevents staff from exploring this timing with, at least with DNR staff, to see if if we have some more time.
I mean, what we're really talking about
For you.
What we're really talking about is one of two things, either a permit modification, which I don't think is likely, and the other is simply enforcement discretion.
Yeah. Yep. And that's, I think, what we would, yeah.
That's something we could explore with DNR, but it may be something that we won't get a definitive answer on either. So.
Okay. So but that was something that I was thinking about, is this May 31 hard and fast, depending on penalties that we might incur. So, and the other thing was, if we make a choice, because we're forced to make a choice by May 31 about what treatment option we're going to use, that can change, can't it? Can we change what we do?
Essentially, can we change our mind? Well, again, in theory, that's possible, but we would probably need to be looking at some point, at least at a permit modification. And again, you have the practical issues of not having enough time to complete the steps if you change your mind. If we decide that we're going to explore the recommended option, and then 6 months from now we say, well, we're now going to go to treatment, we're way behind in terms of the engineering work to enable that to happen. So some kind of amendment would probably be needed in the permit to allow that to happen.
So you're saying that we can change our option, but the problem is then we run into the end date of when we have to have compliance, because now we've gone backwards a little bit.
Well, right. But again, just to be clear, I mean, the permit is very explicit in saying this is our deadline. So we will be out of compliance with our permit. And what action the department chooses to take is something that, I can't guarantee.
That helps me a little bit with that. This isn't out there. No, I don't want anybody to take offense to this, because I'm going to ask us. We talked about this before about MMSD's taxing authority. Do we have special assessment authority as well?
Yes.
So for instance, for brick and mortar, and again, I don't want anybody to call up Tom Wilson and say, what is wrong with you? Just going to ask the question, because we're exploring options. So we do have the ability to special assess. So if there were, and you special assess as in areas that are benefited by improvements that we can make. So we could use our special assessment authority and not spread this cost if there were going to be brick and mortar improvements across the district, but to the area that's served by our particular improvements. Is that correct?
There is, I believe, special assessment authority. As far as I know, that's never been utilized.
I know, that's why I'm telling people not to kick me, but I just want to raise it because it's something to think about.
Yeah. But again, there's a whole a separate series of requirements that goes along with any kind of special assessment, and that, those kinds of changing how we charge for services would certainly be something that would not just require a super majority of the commission to go along with, but it would be a significant change in how the commission has funded projects in the past.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And Tom, as far as comments go, I mean, my comments are that I heard the points raised about the truck protection. Phosphorus is just going to increase anyway. Why are we kicking the problem around without actually doing some other type of treatment? The effects on bad fish creep, it's already bad. It's just going to get worse. we need to keep the Sugar River water in the Sugar River watershed because we made that commitment in 1993. And there should be more people engaged in this process because of the concerns. I mean, that's really all I heard, all things that maybe we can address a little bit when we talk about this as it comes forward to us next time. Plus these other questions about actual enforcement of our choice. Because it seems like, to me anyway, we're really getting down to the wire. And I know we've talked about this at Yahara Winds. At the same time, it always seems like there's something more that arises that we need to think about. I think we've heard some things today. So there's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anyone else?
A couple of things. I appreciate all the comments and the concern about the Badger Mill Creek. And I also want to recognize all the work done by the district. I think they've done a really good job. But one thing I heard is that we need more data. And I've heard that from a number of sources. And I'm wondering, I have a question, and that is could we make an option decision with caveats? Could we, for example, make a decision and say we agree with one thing, but we want some more information, or we want to develop, develop more data? And that's a question for, I guess, you, Paul.
Yes, so just to kind of reiterate the comments I made to Commissioner Wilson. So that we do have this kind of hard and fast date in the permit of May 31st to make that decision. But there are other compliance deadlines within the permit. So by March of 24, we have a progress report on plans and specifications. So that so just running out a scenario, let's say we conduct studies for another 6 months and then decide, well, we're going to go to treatment instead of diversion. We're going to have, less than 3 months to prepare plans and specifications, and we're going to miss another deadline in the permit. So there's kind of this ripple effect. Now, again, that doesn't mean that there might not be some flexibility. I guess the other thing I would just note is that ultimate compliance is a few years off, and it was designed to accommodate the necessary engineering and so forth. But certainly that time period could be used to explore, what kind of mitigation would be appropriate. You heard, I think, for example, Mr. Eilertson talked about some ways to improve flow, either structurally or through groundwater. It's not like if you make this decision that that's the compliance option we have, it doesn't mean that the valve gets turned off on June 1st. Okay. There is this extended compliance period that allows us to talk about how that gets done and how that is implemented if that's the option chosen.
Great. And that's what I was looking for, is really to see how we might implement one of those, our decision. And that, I think, is going to be key to our ongoing discussion.
So could you remind us what the ultimate deadline is for implementation of the selected option? September 30th, 2028.
And are there interim deadlines between?
There's basically annual reports and other compliance deadlines. Some of that assumes a schedule for construction of a new facility or a new treatment option. So exactly how that would be translated, if we're not choosing to build, but we're choosing to do something else, those construction reports might be a little, they would look different than that, but we do have the time built into the permit.
Paul, can I run that all the way to the ground? So would we have to be delivering effluent at the water quality limits as of that date in 28, or we'd have to have construction of a project that's delivering that flow at those new parameters by that September 2028 date?
Right, that we would be
If we were going
achieving compliance with the water quality standard at that point.
If it were adaptive management or trading, we'd be embarking on the multi-year process to implement through those strategies.
Well, if it were adaptive management, we would have the adaptive management schedule that would probably then be incorporated into our next permit. If we were looking at trading, which the department has pretty much ruled out, but just theoretically, the trades would have to be in place and effective as of that date.
Okay, that helps. Thanks a lot.
Okay, anyone else? Brad?
Yeah, I just wanted to get staff's response kind of off the cuff as it might be to the comment that one speaker made about the depth of the groundwater table in certain areas. I guess he mentioned the greater Fitcherona Road area as an example where the depth of the groundwater was about 5 feet below the surface historically, and now it's like 1.5 feet below the surface. And then I don't know if he mentioned pumping as a possible option to replace our effluent. But what is that? What is staff? What's your reaction to that?
Hi, this is Kathy Lake. I will try that response. So that what Mr. Eilertson said is what we have also observed in the area. So he is much more an expert on that specific depths and things like that than I am. But as we have gone through this process and we have walked the area and we have assessed the water resources, there is a lot of stored water in the region that could be leveraged. It appears that a lot of the interests around the project are maintaining a flow in Badger Mill Creek in the future. It doesn't appear that the interest is tied directly to effluent. The interest is a base flow in Badger Mill Creek. And there are other potential ways to do that, and potentially other ways that overall as a region could potentially cost less, have less of an energy impact.
And I would assume that pursuing those alternatives would require a fair amount of time and partnerships and the like that we essentially don't have at this point. I guess maybe I'm jumping to a conclusion that's incorrect, but any ideas on how one might pursue that? Is that something that, I mean, staff has recommended that the district commit up to $1 million for improvements within Badger Mill Creek, and so I guess I'm struggling to ask a decent question.
I think it was a very good question, and working in this one water world for 30 years, this is one project that incorporates rain, stormwater, groundwater, drinking water, wastewater. It incorporates all water. And I truly believe that area in the kind of upper portions of Badger Mill Creek could really benefit from an overall look at hydrology, hydraulics in that area to determine how best to minimize flooding while keeping the base flow of the stream running, helping protect wetlands, helping this. So it does appear that there is it would be a fun project to do. It's not something the district would do, but it is something that there are a lot of people and organizations, municipalities that are very well positioned to undertake that type of study. I think one of the consultants that was on the call had mentioned a lot of green infrastructure. Another person had mentioned that there's the potential for leveraging those water resources. All of those could be incorporated into a study. There was another speaker today that mentioned joint funding, partnership, as well as grant funding for planning, and implementation of projects. This is a regional asset. We know it's a regional asset, but if wastewater effluent were not pumped over there, there are ways that regional asset can be maintained, but it will take people working together and looking at that overall picture.
And would it be appropriate for the district to commit if the commission agrees with the staff recommendation to commit up to X dollars to support improvements to Badger Mill Creek? Would it be appropriate to use some of those funds to support that effort?
Yes.
That's the staff recommendation, that we would return to the commission with more details on what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hubble, Commissioner Eskridge. has
Yeah, I
her
was
hand.
just going to ask. So Sarah, I was just going to ask you if you wanted, if you had anything to say. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. I just want to continue on the point that Commissioner Murphy was just talking about. When we think about staff recommendation, when we meet again about our plan moving forward, one of the things that I'm interested in seeing more about, and frankly, I'm encouraged that Dane County Executive Parisi made the point that Kathy just reinforced about how we need a one water approach and partnerships here. Seems like we have a lot of really good partners, including so many who are in the room today. How can we, in our approval of the plan at this stage, create some sense of certainty around the district's commitment, both financially and from a resource perspective, to partnership continuing in improving the watershed, even if we do go with the approach of stopping the flow? I'm looking for how we can put that in some sort of concrete way coinciding with our approvals, knowing that there will still need to be implementation for a long period of time. I guess what I'd love to see staff grapple with and come back to us with is some sort of language in our approvals that would help us feel that sense of certainty, solidify that, and help our partners also know that that commitment would not be wavering over time. So from my perspective, that's the key thing that I'd love to see staff come back with more details around by the time we do approvals. Otherwise, at this point, I think we've heard from many people. I appreciate all of the comments, and I appreciate the huge amount of staff time and effort that's gone into this project so far. It's clear that we all have a shared commitment to improving the watershed, and I'm proud to be a part of this group with all of you in that shared mission. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I know I had a number of questions written down, but most of those were also basically reiterated by the public or in some of the handouts. So instead of taking the time to go through them here, I'll just look for them, your responses to them when you come out with the next packet. But I did want to say a few things. We heard about One Water. Well, One Water was the basis why MMSD in 1993 or whenever it was chose to take the effluent from the treatment plant at Nine Springs and run a effluent return line all the way through northern Fitchburg to what's now our Badger Mill Creek outfall. And so there were two main reasons. for that. And I know this because I was one of the people on the commission at the time, either showing how stupid I am by staying on for 30 some years or my commitment to it. But there are two main reasons. As one was to maintain an outfall in case. So the story is Verona was getting rid of their sewage treatment plant. An option was to go to MMSD. We approved that option, but the idea was that we wanted to retain an outfall in the Sugar River Basin in case the idea was at that time, 30 years ago, that we would ever build a satellite plant. That's kind of been taken off the table now due to regulatory concerns and other things that what we thought was maybe preserving an option isn't preserving an option. And then the second option was to make up for groundwater reductions that were due to development in two manners. One is you had the groundwater withdrawal from some high municipal wells. And so you were getting less base flow into the stream. And the second part of development was you had more impervious surfaces. And at that point in time, in the 90s, we were only really talking detention ponds. So you detain the water up to the 100-year storm event, and then you release it. And so since then, we've had other things occur, and to the point where we now have infiltration required. Rick Eilertson mentioned that the target development went above and beyond the recommended levels and are infiltrating the water, and whatever infiltrates has to come out somewhere. And so there's changing circumstances. And as Rick mentioned, I was here in Fitchburg when we went through a lot of that. We went through the flooding of the Quarry Ridge Recreation Area, taking out the parking lot, where there were homes that Fitchburg ended up buying because we were being flooded. So there's a lot of different things occurring. And so now it's to the point, the way I understand it, that the city of Fitchburg and the town of Verona are doing a study to determine what to do, because that water in Goose Lake and everything is still higher than normal. And we have a line that goes through there, right? A sanitary sewer line, and has, we've seen pictures of the water up to the near the top of the manhole. So there's things that have changed. And so, but that was, we were thinking, the district was thinking of one water way back then. And so, really what it comes down to is the district has to balance the various concerns and issues. And that's what we'll be doing when it comes probably to our next meeting, is taking all the information, the comments that have been received, and taking the data that we see and responses that we'll get from staff and on the additional comments or questions that were raised. So I just want people to know that, MMSD has always been thinking from a one water standpoint for many years, even before one water became, and then, kind of that in term buzzword. Yeah, thank you. So, what if I knew today what I knew 30 years ago, I don't know. I don't know what decision I would have made then. But it's a very complex issue. We have the guy from the DNR fisheries saying that our return effluent mimics groundwater flow. I don't know that that's a fully correct statement, because the way I understand it, I guess one question I'd like answered is, what is the typical groundwater flow temperature compared to our effluent outfall temperature? Because I think from an effluent outfall temperature, we're probably much higher than the standard groundwater flow of 45 or 50 degrees.
So I'm going to answer that based on DNR has thermal requirements for streams. Our effluent is significantly higher than the temperatures for cold water stream system. We're even higher than temperatures for a limited forage fishery system in multiple months of the year. The effluent temperatures, I did hear one comment today that what would happen in the summer, would the stream temperatures be above 70 degrees without the effluent? Well, our effluent temperatures exceed 70 degrees in the summer. So our temperatures are very stable. I think there is a misconception with wastewater and temperature. Our water comes to the district and it sits in open tanks. It sits in open tanks and then it is pumped to the discharge locations. We monitored for many years to see if we got any reduction in temperature through that piping, and we didn't. We had to figure out how to comply with the temperature limitations for Badger Mill Creek. And we didn't find, that's why we had to apply for alternative effluent limits because our temperatures are warmer. That answer it?
Okay, so is there anybody else from the commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Thank you all for participating. Oh, I'm sorry, Marcia, go ahead. I didn't see your light.
Thank you, Chair. This is my first meeting and you all have been following this issue for a long time. I just started last week. So the thing that strikes me as an elected official is the almost unanimous disagreement with the proposed outcome. So for me, that's something that's pretty serious as a person who is used to getting public comment and weighing everything. And on the other hand, the science seems, if you're on the surface, like to be reasonable. So I think Mr. Wells had a good point. Do we convene some kind of process through I guess we have to go through if we do something by 5/31, but do we then start some kind of thing where we work on that trust building again or find other solutions, or maybe there's things that they're kind of combo solutions? I don't really know the answer. I am not the science geek here. I am just the person that tries to help figure out how to resolve issues that have the best outcome. So I'm here listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ezra?
Couple things. So, thanks to everybody for all the work. I mean, thanks to Kathy and Marty and the whole team at the district for 5 years of research and work on this, and for being stewards of Badger Mill Creek for 25 years. We've done a great job. And the story, I'm developing a narrative of sort of this, I think, amazing success story of Badger Mill Creek that I maybe won't go into today. I'll save it and polish it for the 25th. But even in the staff recommendation version of the future, it's a really positive success story, the way that I see it. And I'm compelled by that excellent information and assessment that the staff and our consultants have done. I'm not there with the folks that are screaming Chicken Little and sort of a dire future scenario. I just don't think that that's borne out by the science. I know that science came together really recently for folks who are stakeholders out here, and that the prospects of losing their resource or having some major impact to their resource is scary. And so I'm listening, and I think we're all really honoring that. Marcia brings up how important that is for us to do. I've got a question for Kathy. There definitely are folks asking for more information on the impacts to the Badfish Creek if we were to go forward with the proposal. And I'm interested in seeing if there's any more we can bring to bear on that between now and the next meeting. I was confused by what it means to flows and some of those sorts of things. Obviously there would be more flow, but you're saying that we would continue to pump at a consistent rate. And so, but I'm an expert on this stuff. I'm trained in water resource management at a master's level. I got a little confused there. And I'm sure I'm not alone then in the whole sort of group of stakeholders tracking it. We want to be obviously good stewards, and we are great stewards of both of those resources, but a little more on that Badfish Creek side could be helpful. I don't know if that's not so much a hot seat question right now, unless you want to, but it certainly would be helpful between now and the 25th, whichever the date is for our next meeting. I had a second thing. I'm trying to think what it was. I might have said it all. Thanks, Tom. I'll think of it later.
Okay.
Commissioner Hubble?
Yes.
I just would like to recap for those members of the public and who are also attending in Zoom that we will be reopening the comment form for public comment to be submitted by Sunday evening. So more to come on that, but we'll be reopening that. Some more comments can be submitted by Sunday evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, your thought of your second.
I think so. Yeah. So Kathy, I might put you on the spot a little bit to hear from you what it is that you've heard from DNR fisheries folks, because there's this very last minute FOIA request, et cetera, information about DNR fisheries input, maybe not as direct as we all might have liked it, but through sort of back channels and whatnot. I'm waiting to hear information that counters what the staff has brought forward, which to me is compelling and thorough and points in a pretty clear direction. But if there's more out there on the fisheries issue and on impacts on trout, I want to hear it. I think probably everyone up here wants to hear it. And thank goodness we have Mr. Wells' great idea, additional time for some of that information to come in. So great, let's have it between now and the next meeting. But can you speak to what information did you receive over time in the last months, years from DNR Fisheries, and what do you make of that issue?
Actually, Marty Griffin is going to handle that question.
Thank you.
So the email from Dave Rowe being referenced came in at the end of April, beginning of May, and we actually sent the response back to Dave about that email. Basically, I think there's some disagreement with the analysis in terms of how much influence our effluent has. The Dave Rowe email talks about these benefits of the environment, but our analysis shows that it's not necessarily due to our particular effluent that are making those favorable conditions. So I think there's a little bit of disagreement there. I think some of the other things in that email, we responded by saying they weren't how we recalled the meetings went. Some of the items in the email were things we heard for the first time. And so there's a little bit of inconsistency on, I think, how things were remembered that they were communicated. There were some assertions that we said, we made assertions about things that we didn't. And there were comments made by DNR in that email that was the first we heard of those. So I think we will definitely have more detailed response in the response to comments since that email was brought up as part of the public testimony. But that's about what I can give you right now.
I'll just say, I mean, I know, the 900-page report from staff came out just a couple weeks ago in late April. And there's a lot to respond to there, but it's, as we know, the clock's ticking. And if there are, if there is expert opinion from folks in fisheries, my God, we need to hear it ASAP. We need to hear it yesterday, and I'm a little frustrated that it didn't come forward in a more direct way sooner, but we can fix that. We've got a little bit of time. So let's get that information into the record and allow us to weigh it amongst all the other really good information that we're looking at. I don't know if anyone in our fisheries is hearing me with that request, but I hope that those who are fisheries folks and have direct contact with those folks will deliver that request for information over to the proper people, because we want to hear from them, but time's now. Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes our discussion. I don't see anyone else. We'll move on to the Chief Engineer and Director update. Michael?
Given the time and the length of this hearing, and I do not have any comments for the commission today. I'll save those for the next meeting.
Paul, do you wanna?
Yeah, I can save that till next time.
Okay, future meeting schedule. I think we're scheduled to meet virtually but I'm wondering if we should meet in person at the district. Would people prefer that on May 20th, the 25th, to meet in person?
I am out of town and unavailable for the meeting anyway. If I were available, I would say you should meet in person.
Okay, so we will have an in-person meeting at the normal district location for our meeting in 2 weeks. Does that make sense, Michael?
It does. We won't have the technology like we have here, as you know, but we can definitely do that.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we've concluded the public hearing.
Right.
So, yep. Okay, so that takes care of future meeting schedule. And the one thing we were going to talk about at another meeting too, following our May 1st meeting with Michael, was how often we wanted to meet in person. So we'll wait for that. So any future agenda topics? Any other business? And motion to adjourn.
I would move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Murphy to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your cooperation today.